Okay, our next speaker is Joe Lanier. Joe grew up in Southwest Colorado in the small town of Pleasant View. Anybody been? It's a great town. He graduated high school in the Cortez class of 1997, and from 1997 to 1998, Joe served as a Colorado State FFA officer. He then went on to serve a 2-year mission in the exotic locale of Missouri, and then graduated from BYU, Idaho in 2004 with an animal science and ag business degree. In 2002, Joe married Jen, and they now have 6 amazing children. And they moved back to Pleasant View in 2004 and bought a place of their own near the original family farm, homesteaded in 1917 by Joe's great-grandfather. Please help me welcome Joe to the stage.
Well, it's a privilege to be here, and I'm humbled to share the stage with Bob and Elizabeth, and I'm quite intimidated to be here in front of you that are smarter than me and wiser than me. But I've been asked just to share basically my story, our experiences, things I've learned, some of our trials, and so yeah, I mean, take it for what it's worth. I'm from Pleasant View, Colorado. So if the screen was Colorado, Pleasant View. Oh, sorry, I'll just stand here. Okay, I shouldn't wander much. But we're right down in the corner of the state, between Cortez and Dove Creek, if you know where that's at. So the other part of Colorado. My family, they are my why. They are my reason for wanting to carry on the traditions of the family and to be where we're at. Like I say, six kids, 3 boys, 3 girls. A little bit of family history. 4 generations, my great-grandpa, my grandfather, my dad, and me as the baby there. The original homestead is that little wooden shack. That was the first one in the area with a wooden floor, so they would come there and have dances in that area. I'm on the Conservation District Board, the High Desert Conservation there in Cortez, and also on the Southwest Colorado Livestock Association. So I'll try and make sense of what I'm wanting to say. So if I jump around, hopefully in the end it all makes sense. I had to speak at my dad's funeral 3 months ago, and there was probably 500 people there, so this that gave me a little bit of practice, I guess, for being here. So if I get emotional about the things I learned from him, that's why. My great-grandpa came to this area in 1917, and he was on his way to Nebraska to homestead some farmland in Nebraska, and his brother wrote him and said, why don't you come to Southwest Colorado and see what you think? So he came to that area, and he never left. My grandpa was born in the house that's still, that my mom lives in now. Still doing, when my great-grandpa came there, he cleared 3 acres of land. If you know Southwest Colorado, pinyon, juniper, he cleared 3 acres of land and started with pinto beans and wheat on those 3 acres. My dad continued on the farm, doing a lot of wheat, pinto beans, and that's what we did from 1917 till about 2016, was a pinto bean and wheat rotation. The climate down there, much like here, it's dry and it's hot, and even the last few years is drier and seems like warmer. So we conventionally tilled. We conventionally, we moldboard plow, we'd work ground, we would plant beans, we'd put a pre-plant down, we would work that in, We would plant, then we'd cultivate, then we'd work then when it come time to harvest, we'd run the bean cutter, come through again with the combine. So lots of trips through the field. And so we had lots of bare ground, and that was just what everybody did in the area. And so that's what we did, and that's what that's what we knew. We, along with the pinto beans and wheat, we do alfalfa, or did alfalfa. Well, we still do, but it was the late 80s. It was all dry land prior to the 80s, and we got irrigation. So once we got irrigation, alfalfa came to the area, and so we put up a lot of alfalfa, and a lot of our alfalfa goes to Texas. We'd put up dairy quality alfalfa and ship it to Texas. And we still do a little bit of that. The last few years, I've realized that, the alfalfa as a monoculture is, it's compacting our ground, and I'm shipping all those nutrients off to Texas. And every night when I'm baling hay, not every night, but those nights when I'm baling hay and I have to crawl under the baler, and I'm lying there under the baler trying to rethread string or, fix a plugged up baler or, a shear bolt, whatever it is, I just think, is this what I need to be doing? I know there's other ways. I know there's things I can change. So as I'm baling hay, I still have those thoughts. So I went to BYU, Idaho let me back up. I graduated high school in Cortez. I served as a state FFA officer. So I did travel around Colorado, and the FFA program holds a spot in my heart, and I appreciated those opportunities. So I went off to college, graduated from there in 2004, and was introduced a little bit in college to the Ranching for Profit organization, and I was in charge of one of the cattle herds at the college, and so we were moving that cattle herd around and trying some different experiments with them. Graduated in 2004. I came back to the farm. I bought a place. The neighbor's place came up for sale. My dad said, you interested in buying it and coming back? So I said, yeah, I'll buy it. It was at a bank auction. So we bought it because I knew the family place, needed more acres than just what was there. So bought that 2004. I came back home, and, we did pinto beans and hay and wheat. And 2008, I did go to the Ranching for Profit school and learned a lot there. Came back home from the Ranching for Profit school. I said, Dad, because until then we were running cows. We'd run them on our summer pasture, kind of not clear up in the mountains, but close to the mountains. If you know where McPhee Reservoir in Colorado, we look off of our place onto the McPhee Dam. So we're right along the river, about 800 feet up from the river. And I said, look, we need to probably make some changes with the way we run our cows. So, we moved our calving season back a little bit. We tried a few other things to help mimic nature in our cattle herd. So we didn't, I came back, or once we started making some of these changes, we still had family involved. When we tried to talk to some of the family, it didn't go real far. One of the comments was, well, that's a great, farming 101, but it doesn't work here in the real world. So I saw right then that it may take some time. So things had to happen on the family place. We had to reorganize some things and split up some things. So that hasn't been without trials, but we're in a lot better place right now. And moving forward with what we want. So in 2016, I went to, I knew the pinto beans and the wheat wasn't paying off on the dry land. And I thought, we've got to increase, production on our dry land. So I went to Missouri just to attend a grazing school. And I thought to myself, and my wife even asked me too, she's like, well, they get a lot more rain in Missouri. Why are you going to a grazing school there? I mean, it's going to be different. And so talking to other people, realizing the principles are still the same wherever you're at. And so I went to this school, came back. It was at Greg Judy's grazing school, and I met a man named Ian Mitchell Innes from South Africa. And I had an aha moment there in Missouri when they started talking about animal health and how the grass, the plant health ties into the animal health, and how the soil health ties into the grass, and clear into human health and everything. And it was there that I was like, we have to focus on the soil. Like, we're not going to make changes on our place until we start doing something with the soil. The way we were tilling, the way we were spraying, the way we were fertilizing, everything that we were doing is affecting that soil, which is affecting ultimately our health, our bottom line, everything we did. So I came home from that and said, Dad, maybe we should make some changes. And I'm the only boy. I've got 4 sisters, so I'm the only one there. And I said, what if we tried a few things? And sorry. His comment was, if here in a few years, you're going to be running this place. And if you want to head that direction, let's get started now. So the fall of 2016, and I just started on our dry land. I didn't start on our irrigated yet. Because I knew our, dry land, I didn't want to do beans anymore. We were going to have to spend, $250,000 on new bean equipment, and I just didn't want to tie that money up into iron. So 2016, the fall of 2016, I planted a cover crop in on our dry land, 1,000 acres. That was one of my mistakes, was right off 1,000 acres. And so it came up good that winter. So this was June of 2017. And brought in, had a friend that needed a place to go with some stalkers. So I brought in 300 stalkers and moved them across this cover crop that I had planted. It was a rye and triticale wheat and some clover. And we got into about July and realized, I had planted all that, basically at the same time in September, and it was getting ahead of us. I couldn't move cattle fast. I was moving them once a day, and we weren't keeping up with it. If I push play, will it play? Oh, there we go. So, we'd put up just a poly wire, just a 1 strand, and if you kept them happy with feed and water, they stayed in, and it worked fine. It was some labor putting up fence, but really enjoy the cattle end of it and just watching cattle graze. Maybe I'm stuck. Okay, so we didn't graze it clear to the ground. One thing I learned from Ian is that the energy in the plants is in the top third. So you only want to graze the top third. Once you start getting lower in the plants, that's where your protein is. When your animals start eating excess protein, that's when you start having health issues. The pink eye, most of your diseases are from excess protein in the animal. So we would just graze the top third, move on, and just leave that to recover. In grass, when you cut a grass plant, if you don't cut it all the way down, it regrows faster. So, you can increase the grass on your place. You can triple the grass on your place by not overgrazing. I don't know if I'm not pointing this in the right direction. Oh, how do I go back? So yeah, just another image of those cows. In 2018, I had decided to buy a no-till drill. We were getting enough residue on the ground that the other John Deere disc drill that I had just wasn't going to cut through the residue. So we started doing some no-till on some of our dry land ground, realizing that we needed to not only do this on our dry land but on our irrigated. That's where we'll see greater results. So, it's dry when we get good rains. It's fun to see a plant growing where dead residue is still there. I use my neighbors as examples, not because I'm any better. I mean, they're great farmers. It's just I'm doing things different, and now I don't have any bare ground or less bare ground. So I use pictures, and I'm standing in my rye where I just had cows. I had just moved them, and across the road the neighbors were working ground. So Gabe's quote, a sheet of paper, that's not very much soil to lose to equal a ton of topsoil. So as I watched that, I just realized that there's a lot of changes that I still need to do that just aren't happening around in agriculture, period. That same field, mine's on the right, on the left. Same actual field, just from the other direction. This was after a rain event, the 1 or 2 rain events we had this summer. Just seeing the erosion now that comes through, that happens on these bare fields. This was in July, so my field, was dead. We haven't had any rain. We're in drought. And, but at least I don't have as much runoff as I normally would. I got a lot of his topsoil. In 2020, 2021, our irrigation, they gave us an inch and a half. We're on the Bureau of Reclamation Water, so we had, we're assigned, our full allotment is 22 inches of water. 21, we got an inch and a half, and in 22, they started out 2 inches, but they ended up giving us 9, but it was incrementally over the summer. So, hard to plan and hard to know what to do at the beginning of the summer. When you say they only going to tell us we're only going to get 2 inches. I'm still a lot of progress that needs to be made. I had Ray Archuleta on our place, and he pointed out all the bare ground I still had, which obviously I knew that, but I needed someone that smart to come tell me I still had a lot of bare ground. So you look out across there, and it looks good, but when you scroll, if you want to play that, when you look down, there's still way more bare ground than I want. But I can only do so much when we're in a drought. So I'm keep on trying on, keep on keeping on, trying to cover my ground, trying to try new things, try to experiment with things that will work and won't work. There's some bindweed in there, and I found out this year that rye competes with bindweed. Bindweed doesn't like rye. A lot of things don't like rye. Even my neighbors that grow wheat don't like rye. But my cows will eat it, and they'll eat bindweed. And with rye growing and cows eating it, I'm seeing less bindweed. So I started to look at things like, okay, why is that here? Why is the bindweed here? Why is the thistle here? You know, I mean, we used to spray, we used to work through it. So used to, do a lot of things that we're trying to change now. One of those things we've changed is, well, I told you we moved our calving back. This was in 2016, and we had been buying heifers and breeding them and selling them as bred heifers in the fall. This year, in 2016, we bought these heifers and some of our own. Anyway, we eyed these heifers to calve in January, and we thought, well, because guys will want heifers. Guys want to calve their heifers earlier, and so we had 150 first calf heifers, and in January, the market just wasn't what it was, and so we thought, well, we'll just calve them out and then sell them as pairs. And and I knew better, and I knew going to Ranch for Profit and these other things, like, you're not supposed to calve in the wintertime, but we thought we were going to sell them, and I wasn't planning on calving them out, but I calved them out. And that was the longest winter that I've had. And checking these heifers every 2 hours. The snow that winter was deep, and the good thing that came out of it was it made my dad a believer. He was like, we will never calve in January again. So, things like that. I'm hard-headed, I learned. So now we calve we start calving the end of April, sometime middle of April. My kids are in 4-H, and so we have a few club calves that we calve out so they're big enough to be ready for fair. So we start those in April, but I try and do our majority of our calving in May, even into June. Why fight Mother Nature? The cows require their most nutrients when they're about to calve. And if you're calving when the grass is at its peak, when it has its most nutrients, that's the ideal time. In Mother Nature, the deer and the elk, they're not calving in January. And so we changed our calving season. We changed our health protocol. We're not vaccinating when we're not trying not to overgraze. We're not picking up all the bad stuff that's in the ground. All your organisms, your parasites, everything that a cow's going to get that you have to pour for, it's in the bottom part of that plant. So if you're not grazing clear down to the plant, you have less parasites. So we've quit pouring our cattle, vaccinating. If one gets sick, we'll take care of it. But another thing we've done is to reduce our cow size. I do have a few cows that are bigger because, like I say, my kids are in 4-H, so I'd have just a handful. This was, I think, 3 days ago, and those 3 cows were at the water trough. But that red cow in the middle, they're all the same age, but she takes a lot more groceries to keep her fed, to keep her happy. And so I realize, there's no reason to have to feed extra when their calves are going to be the same weight at weaning. I'm going to produce the same amount of meat. So she's getting cold here real soon with a handful of others, but that's just another thing that we've changed, or in the process of changing. It's been kind of a work in progress. 2017, we made strides planting this cover crop. 2018, it was dry. nothing even greened up in the spring down there for us. And so we didn't do anything as far as our crops, or especially on our dry land in 2018. 2019, we ran some cattle, did some custom grazing for some other guys. 2020, a little more custom grazing. And then 2020, we had, arranged to have some stalkers brought in. COVID hit, and things went crazy, and he wasn't interested in bringing these custom cattle. So we didn't do it in 2020, 21. Inch and a half of rain, or inch and a half of irrigation, kind of put a cramp in our style on our irrigation. The dry land, just crops weren't doing much. Kind of the same story this year with not being able to plant. So ultimately, our plan is to not be doing as much hay. Like I say, we did do some alfalfa this year, and we still sell a little bit, but I would really like to get away from shipping off nutrients and do more of, keeping everything on our own place and doing some of our own grazing. We've tried some bale grazing, and I've learned that when I bale graze, if you bale graze on soft ground, you kind of pug up the ground like this. So this is one of my experiments I just wanted to see. That was an irrigated field. I mean, it recovered the next year, but the first year, it did look like this. But this made me a believer on bale grazing. Those green spots, this was June 17th of this year. I had planted a crop last fall, winter barley and triticale, but those green spots are where I bale grazed 2 years ago. I didn't bale graze last winter on this spot, but that's from 2 years ago where I bale grazed. Kind of hard to see, but that made me a believer. I wished I could get that, bale graze on the whole place. I just don't have enough cows and enough hay and to cover everything. So bale grazing has great benefits to the soil. I look back at the past a lot, but realize, I just have to move forward and not, use the past as a way to guide. That neighboring field that showed the runoff, they do great sunflowers, they do great crops, but the soil health in our area just isn't a priority. I had video of I'm sure you've all seen the rain simulator, but if you want to play that.
Fully appreciate the potential runoff and erosion from a conventionally tilled field like this, you really need to be out here during the most intense thunderstorm of the year. Since most people aren't willing to do that, here in Virginia, we use a rainfall simulator to help our farmers tell the story of what happens when it rains really hard. On the left, we start with a tray of dry, loose soil taken from a clean till field. On the right, we start with a slice of intact surface soil from a long-term no-till field. This soil is not only protected with a mulch of cover crop residue, it also has a stable, porous sponge structure.
Years ago, as a kid, I remember, you'd get these big, heavy thunderstorms in the summer, and it would just wash the field, and you'd end up with mud down the road. And I'm talking about mud that you'd go over there with a skid loader and scoop out of the way so the cars could go down the road. What I'm seeing now is I'm seeing these heavy rainfalls, and I'm barely seeing a trickle coming out of the field.
After we simulate an extremely intense thunderstorm for 5 minutes, the differences are obvious. Most of the water we applied to this soil has run off into this jar, carrying away with it a thin but very significant layer of topsoil. We just applied 1.5 inches of very intense rainfall to this bare, tilled soil. obviously we harvested very little for future plant use. Meanwhile, this no-till soil has absorbed virtually every drop of water we applied. What little ran off is clear. The bottom line is pretty simple. If you want to harvest more rain like these no-till farmers are doing, keep your soil covered on top and make it a sponge underneath.
Our yields, as far as I'm concerned, our yields have.
Okay, so I wanted to show the video of our place, but I've seen this video, and I'm sure you've seen videos or the actual rain simulators, and I wondered, was it the same on our place?
To fully appreciate.
Oh, how do I go back one? So anyway, this video was better than the video I had of the soil off our own place. But when Ray, as a conservation district, we had Ray come and Ray Archuleta come and do a presentation back in May, and then he came again in October. And he came out to our place and did some soil samples and things on our place. But we had the class there in Yellow Jacket at the CSU Research Center. And they do great things at the research center, but we tested one of their field, their organic field there. And when Ray did the water infiltration, I think it says, 3 minutes for that water to infiltrate. The next day on one of our fields, now we hadn't tilled this field in 6 years. This was the last field my dad tilled. A few days prior to this. So, 27 seconds. Even though it was tilled, there's still, good infiltration in that soil. Where we run livestock in the wintertime, in the summertime, excuse me, this is what it looks like. This was last week, and so there's no leaves on that oak brush, but just to give you an idea, that's where we're running cattle in the summertime. Will be, mostly our pairs, our cow-calf pairs, we run there in the summer. Our stockers, will run them on our dry land and irrigated ground. One of the issues we have is prairie dogs. You guys have prairie dogs here? Or is that just the western part of Colorado? I'm tired of them. I hate them. And, this field I was embarrassed about. But, and I shoot them and I poison them and I try and get rid of them because they're just hard to deal with, especially when you're putting up alfalfa. And this field, I planted a cover crop. Green cover, smart mix calculator I really like. So I planted a cover crop on this hillside. It was just, most of it, or a big chunk of it, was just bare with prairie dogs. You can kind of see that spot in the middle. It was a half a pivot, and just let it grow. And they don't like it when they can't see, and so I just let that grow up and. Just to see. So that's still standing right now. It's frozen down, but I'll turn cows on that here in probably 2 weeks and graze that down. Another challenge we have is elk. We're in an area where the elk move off the high country and they winter on our place and our neighbors' places and all around. So it's hard to do fences. It's hard for electric fence to subdivide and have paddocks. And so one thing I really want to try is the virtual fence. I hope I can, someday afford a virtual fence, because that would make life easy. Again, some of the ground we run on where we have our cattle, where the elk are also. If you'll play that. That was last week. And that was just a small portion of them, which it's great. I mean, I love them. And we work with the Division of Parks and Wildlife, and have a good working relationship with them on elk and deer and some sharp-tailed grouse. But they are still a challenge. To help offset the damage that they do, we do some outfitting. So we run guided elk and deer hunts on our place. Elizabeth showed this same thing earlier. So we're trying to increase our organic matter on our place. I'm running out of time, but this rain event that we had this summer, I wished I'd have panned across the road because my place was on the other side of the road with a cover crop, but it made me a believer on the runoff that you get when you don't have your soil covered. And, I've had to look at weeds differently. I've had to realize they're there for a purpose. And, ask yourself, why are they there and what are they doing? What function do they perform? Just looking down at that cover crop that I had on that half a pivot. A couple of the people that have been instrumental in my journey, obviously I mentioned Ray. He has become a dear friend in the last 8 months, and have learned a great deal from him. Ian Michelinis, also from South Africa, someone that has been there, done that, and knows a lot. So my kids, my wife, they love to garden, and like I said earlier, they're my why, and they are interested in this journey. They want to see it succeed, and they want to be a part of it. Ray called the other day, and my 9-year-old daughter, she asked who it was as I was on the phone. I said, "It's Ray," and she said, "Oh, I want to talk to him." So I put her on the phone with Ray, and he's asking how she's doing and all this. And as soon as he started telling her about his guardian dogs, his puppies, she just lit up. So now she wants to get a puppy from Ray. Some of our plans in the future, we are going to continue on this regenerative path. We're going to continue to try and cover our soil, trying to increase production, increase the health of our livestock, the amount of livestock we run. We want to do some more direct-to-consumer marketing. We sell our beef right now, halves and wholes. Looking at partnering with a company that has just started a grass-fed beef marketing. They talked to us about raising some of their livestock and selling through them Bell beef. So we're looking at some of those opportunities to see how that goes. Multi-species grazing. I would really like to do that, but right now I don't have the bandwidth to run pigs and goats and chickens, and so I'm considering, bringing someone to our place that has their own, whatever it is, pigs or goats, and just providing a land base for them, and I want to see the benefits to our place from that. So really looking serious into doing that, offering that to someone that has the same goals in mind as I do. Agritourism, we're thinking pretty serious about. I don't know if any of you go to Southwest Colorado, but I think it's pretty. You go down to Mesa Verde, you have Canyon of the Ancients, you have the reservoir. A lot of our places right on the rim of Canyon of the Ancients. So, we've talked about some glamping and, just some of those things. I've never wanted to open our place up, kind of a private person, but the more I think about it, I kind of want to share it. So we might open our place up to some of that, maybe even some bike trails, maybe. our outfitting business, we have opportunities to expand that, and I love the wildlife. Wildlife's a big part of us down there, but I also, it's more about quality than quantity to us, and so we want to maybe look at opportunities to do that. So anyway, in closing, I go to these conferences and I learn, but knowledge is nothing without some kind of action. So invite you to read a book, to watch a YouTube video, to listen to a podcast, and anyway, appreciate the invite to be here.
That was really excellent. Thank you, Joe. Is this your first talk? Your first big? Wow, what a great job! Unfortunately, we have time for one question before lunch, but I thought I think a lot of these questions are, have you considered this? Have you considered this? But this seemed like one that might be relevant. Have you considered planting native grasses or perennial grasses in with your annuals and or adding bison?
So yes, actually on our dry land, I should have mentioned, that's my ultimate goal, is to get back into a perennial system, native grasses, even some introduced grasses, but get it into a perennial system because, cover crops, they do get expensive, fuel's expensive planting them. And so I do want to get into that at least my dry land into a perennial grass. Considered bison for about that long. I've considered it. Not that it's out of the question, but I haven't considered it a lot. There is, a few down there, but I know I don't know, it's something different. I'm not saying no, but I haven't considered it a lot. So.